Hi, everybody. This is the Gospel Reflection for the third Sunday in Easter. And it's a story filled with some of the most poignant moments surrounding the resurrection. After all of the drama of the passion, of the crucifixion and resurrection, there come these smaller moments in which individual people start to encounter the risen Christ in these life-changing but much quieter ways. And the road to Emmaus, which is the story for this Sunday, is one of those couple of those profound moments. So I thought, since it was a story about being on the road, I would come out and take us all walking on this road. And there's a part, which I'll read in a moment, about how the disciples, or the two men, they were so sad and they stood still. And so I got to this particular spot, and it's spring, very New Englandy looking, stone wall, the whole 9 yards, and it just seemed like the place to stop. And I had my hood on because it's a little bit rainy, and that was the moment at which I could hear this creek. So I'm going to try, I wonder if I can flip it around. Oh, I don't see a way to do that. Nope. I'll flip the camera. So here is what I heard. So you can see this beautiful little creek and the skunk cabbage coming up. And, well, naturally, I clicked the wrong button on the side of my phone and turned it off. But all these signs of spring, all of this beautiful life happening. So I thought I would take us for a little walk and talk about this gospel. I'm going to get a little further away to make it a little bit easier to hear. Ooh, now I hear birds. This is the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke. Now on that same day, 2 of Jesus' disciples were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Gospel of the Lord. So, here we're on the road, and I think it's an apt place to find ourselves in good companionship with the disciples who were returning to Emmaus. Maybe they're home from Jerusalem. It wasn't far away, but when you're on foot, 7 miles can be kind of a lot. And when Jesus asked them, of course they didn't know at the time that it was Jesus, when he asked them, "What are you talking about?" It's as if everything in them just lost the will to keep moving forward, and they just stopped and stood still, looking sad. And I wonder how often so many of us feel that way at various points throughout this period. I'm kind of having a day like that. I don't want to do anything. And yet I know if I just stop and sit still and feel sad, nothing's going to get any better. So I decided it was doubly important to come outside and walk around and breathe fresh air and listen to birds and see what I could find. And I find that I'm trying to ask more and more for God to be with me, even in the midst of whatever swirling anxiety or doubt or worry or just kind of depression feeling I'm feeling. The downness, right? The doldrums. Because God is in that too. And the other thing that stands out to me of this beautiful, beautiful story of the first disciples encountering the risen Christ is the moment at which they recognized him. He took the bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them. And that's the moment they recognized him as Jesus. So I had a really great conversation with my spiritual director this week about this exact passage, because she's working through the same text. And we talked about how one of the revolutionary things that Jesus brought about, one of the radical reforms that his being brought, that God brought into the world and challenged our small ways of doing religion with, was the importance of his body. That religion is not just an idea, that how we believe is not just about things that we think, but what happens in our bodies and with our bodies, the ways that we use our bodies, how our bodies exist on this earth. So, I'm thinking about this particular land I'm standing on, and I think it's some held in reserve land. I think it's part of conservation land, but it's close to a bunch of farms, and it's also land that was once entirely forested, it was forested because it was entirely covered in forest. So all of these marshy areas are either marshes or the effects of still recent farming operations. And of course, before that, it was land inhabited by native peoples who had an entirely different relationship to the ways that things, especially trees, grew, and food, and the way that human beings and the earth interacted. So I wonder a lot about those times before industrial agriculture, before industrial anything. And I'm finding as I'm making, sourdough bread, poorly making sourdough bread, but, without commercial yeast, how different bread is. And without pasteurization processes, how short the shelf life of so many things are. And it's just astonishing how much I think about food these days. And I'm trying not to overeat, but it's just, about the procurement of food and how do I get food and how do I minimize the risk and what keeps and what can I do to put things in jars or pickle them or ferment them so that they last longer, and so on and so forth. And those moments I feel most human. Those moments I feel most alive. And those are the moments in which I can feel my spirit connecting with God. Certainly not when I'm just grinding away in my own thoughts and kind of lost in the figuring out of things that can't be figured out. Jesus gave us bread because he gave us his own body. God gave us divine presence in a human body. That was the whole point of incarnation. And it's funny to hear Jesus' almost flip response to the disciples. And says, "Oh, are you so weak in the heart? Didn't you think the Messiah would have to suffer?" As if to say, what kind of life did you think God would take? One that didn't include suffering? Because such a life, he's trying to get us to understand, such a life wouldn't even be human. So, I encourage you, I don't know how you're all getting your food. I know I'm putting a lot more thought into mine. I expect, you all are too. And maybe that's offering different opportunities to think about your own habits, your own presence on the earth, your own presence in a body. It's not just about our vulnerability to viruses and other infections. It's about getting to nourish ourselves too, longing for all the hugs we're not having right now, and so on and so forth. I wonder, I'm going to do this, if we might take some intentional moments with bread or with an orange, right, which had to be shipped from God only knows where to get it here, and really sit with that. And really see what happens when you notice the gift of that food. See if you can imagine or see if you can feel in some way Jesus' presence with you as you break that bread. Bless it. Offer it to God. Offer your own body to God. All your days, all your breaths, all your time. See what happens. See if that doesn't give you a different way of moving through this strange, strange time other than just busyness and chaos management. Ours is not a religion to just think about, but to live and to metabolize and to let pass through our cells, the cells that God knit together in our mother's wombs. These bodies are not just sort of embarrassing things that fall apart with time. These bodies are gifts. It doesn't always feel that way, especially not in our vulnerability. But again, are we so silly as to think either the Messiah or ourselves would pass through this strange, beautiful life without some suffering? It's part of the deal. And contrary to some interpretations of our tradition, it doesn't mean that anything went wrong. It means that we are small, small specks in a glorious and profound world full of systems that support life, that have been crafted and woven together by a creator who wants nothing more than for us to live in joy and in peace. So, where are you on the road? Are you on the way to Emmaus, looking sad, trudging along? Are you on the way to Jerusalem, bounding with joy and astonishment? Are you on a road less traveled? There's a Robert Frost trail around here somewhere. Are you on a road that isn't even a road because you're hacking your way through some kind of wilderness and you don't know where you're going. There's no road you're on that Jesus can't find you. The question is whether your eyes will be opened to recognize him there with you. Peace and blessings on this rainy day. I think tomorrow, which is Saturday, might be a little bit better, but we're going to have some April showers, it sounds like. So let there be peace and a sense of safety with all of you. And no matter what, know that God holds you. Amen.